Are you nervous about being a first-time speaker? In today's episode of the Coach U Show, we're sitting down with Dylan Haugen, who just today gave his first-time speech, and we're going to talk about how do you overcome nerves, how do you prepare for the speech, what do you do during the speech, and everything else that you need to do to have a successful presentation. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So what happened? What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the JVA Align Summit. It's for like club directors and owners for specifically volleyball clubs, and we were talking about AI and kind of how they can integrate that into what they already do, save them time, get more people joining their clubs, highlight their athletes, all that stuff. So yeah.
And how did you feel coming into this?
Coming into it, I wasn't really sure how I felt, honestly. I've done, public speaking here and there in school, obviously, dumb assignments where they make you stand up in front of the class and talk about random things that you don't really care about. But I haven't really done something like this where I'm talking about something that, I actually do and care about, and in front of a slightly bigger audience as well. So I was a little bit nervous coming into it, but obviously having this guy here helps a lot. Done it a lot, knows a lot about it, so made it pretty easy, to be honest.
So for people who are nervous about first-time speaking and they have something coming up on the calendar, tell them, what did you do to prepare?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that almost everything I do surrounding the topic is preparation in a way, just like learning about it, doing it all the time. I'd say that's the biggest thing, is just like I knew what we were talking about. But also, we're talking about AI. I also used AI to kind of like create an outline and all that. So the outline we didn't exactly use, but we kind of like, went off of it a bit. So we had specific things we wanted to cover, and we just kind of covered them, randomly throughout it, depending on what the people in the crowd wanted to see, whatever questions they had. And so just kind of having a general outline, but also knowing that it can go any direction, especially when you're doing what we were doing, which was live demo. But yeah, if you're speaking, I'd say have an outline, but don't just stick to it and read off a script. Like, I think just kind of talking from whatever makes sense for the moment made a lot more sense. So yeah.
Yeah. So a more dynamic audience because we were using real examples from the audience. People were asking questions. It was lively. I think it came up
Definitely,
afterwards.
yeah.
They're very happy. And I think one of the things when you're giving a professional presentation at a conference like this is that we might overassume the level of knowledge and experience of the folks who are here. And they came here to learn about AI. And most of them had not done a lot with, you had a few people who were sophisticated.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is once you realize that they're coming here for help and they already assume that you're an expert, then a lot of that fear goes away because now you're focusing on helping them and meeting them where they are, rather than like, I wonder if they're going to judge me as an expert or if I know enough or I'm going to sound good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that might have been part of my nervousness is I was like, what if, I don't know, they start asking me questions, like I don't know the answers or something like that. But you have to consider that this was volleyball club directors and stuff, and so we don't really expect them to know that much. And so I feel like once I kind of heard a few of those questions, like, what do we do? Like, we first download chat, like just stuff like that. I was like, okay, like I don't have to really know as much as you'd think you have to know. Just got to know what I know, and that's what we're presenting about, obviously. So it was a good kind of opportunity to show them some of the cool things it does, and then obviously their free time they can go and experiment with it, which I hope they all do.
I thought one of the coolest things that makes a great presentation like we saw today is that we're teaching from our own direct experience. So all these club directors, they want to win on social media. They want to attract parents to come to their clubs and enroll, because they could do soccer or karate or other sorts of programs, but to sign up for the volleyball programs, they have to have a website, they have to be on YouTube, they have to do all the social media things. And because Dylan has 100 million views across all the social medias, and he actually is an active practitioner of this, that creates credibility.
Yeah.
And I think, like if you're obese and you want to give weight loss advice, your advice might be good, but you're not a practitioner of what you talk about. So I'm a big fan of being an actual practitioner, because then we gave away a guide, this 300-page guide that shows here's how we use ChatGPT or Gemini, here's how we create custom GPTs, here's how we turn videos into articles, here's how we rank on keywords, how we build websites, how we interview people, all the things that we do. And because Dylan has hundreds of hours of experience doing this, there's no better preparation. And you can just speak from experience, and it doesn't take a lot of preparation. And in fact, we could have done this. We pretty much did do this off of no deck. There is no deck. I know everyone else does PowerPoints, and I don't believe in PowerPoint because I feel like that doesn't allow for a true demonstration of skill.
Yes.
Because most people, they come to a conference and it's just PowerPoint after PowerPoint. People are terrible. They're just reading the slides. And here, we're just taking example after example, putting on their website, looking at their social, answering their questions, generating stuff, recording video live, processing that video, stuff they'd never seen before. And once people see this is super relevant to them, and they see that we're actually doing the thing, like we're actually editing the video and fixing the words and posting to social media or whatnot, then they realize, you know what, we could probably do that too.
Yeah, I'd say, going off that, a big tip would just be, speak on something that you're passionate about and that you actually do. Like, don't go to something and try to talk about, something just because it's relevant. Like, I know he's been to a ton of these conferences and things, and a ton of people will just say, like, AI is the future, and they'll just yap the entire time about, like, stuff that they really know nothing about. But if you're talking about something that you actually do and is actually relevant to you and relevant to the audience, then I think that, what we did is going to hopefully help a lot of them.
And so we were super specific about AI. We weren't saying like, oh, it's the future, like just generalizations. That's what people, that's not helpful when you just generalize.
Showed specific examples and tools that they can use, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, custom GPTs, Descript, Google Photos, all that stuff.
Another thing to make it relevant for the audience, this was a bunch of club directors that run volleyball organizations, and maybe you play some volleyball, but you're a basketball or you're a dunker more specifically. But to see what the similarities are, because in order to build your personal brand, which then drives sponsorships and business things, they see the same thing in parallel. And they see that like part of the key to being a great dunker is a really high vertical jump, and that's probably good in volleyball too. If you want to spike it really hard, you need to jump a lot higher. So think about how your experience can be relevant to the audience.
Yeah, so I mean, going off of that, like you said, like just kind of relating things together, we showed like my knowledge panel and my social media and stuff, because obviously probably their main goal as a club is just to attract more, players and things and grow their club. But another thing that I'm sure a lot of them are thinking about is helping out their players specifically, because if you have, this player, this player, this player, and they're all doing really good on social media, then, it all leads back to the club that they're a part of. And more people are going to want to play for that club because they're going to be seeing it and stuff. And so kind of showing those examples of what he's helped me do with, my knowledge panel, my social media, my personal brand website, stuff like that, to show them to, help their athletes become more Googleable, build their personal brands. That'll lead to, NIL deals, brand partnerships, and, maybe even like scholarships in college and stuff. So yeah, just building out names, that was another big thing that we covered.
So many real examples. All these people want to help, and we gave away a guide so that way people can actually follow up, because we didn't have a lot of time. We didn't teach like a full day class on how to use AI. So think about what are the most important things you can do to address the pain that the audience has. What's the thing they really want to accomplish? Show them something practical, step by step, what they could do, and give them a guide. And we had the guide with the QR code on it, and anyone could download that. So I know later today, or when people get back to the office, when they fly home after the conference, they're going to start contacting Dylan and myself. And though we never promote ourselves, we know that a lot of these guys, probably the bigger club directors, will say, well, I'm a $2 million club, and we know we need to leverage AI. We have a couple marketing people, but can you train them? Can you consult for us? Can you implement? Can we hire you for stuff? And that's the best way to generate more consulting revenue, is ironically not by ever selling, but just giving as openly and transparently and helpfully as you can. And then they want to hire you. And then you can start to bring other people together. And if they're not really a fit for you, then you can decide, you know what, I'll just do a quick call just to help you out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've seen in the jump training space, but obviously it's kind of led into what I'm doing now, is that, you give away free information and the people, people will watch it and they'll pretend like they're going to use it, but at the end of the day, a lot of them aren't going to use it. Like, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this room. Chances are not all of them are going to go back and do it because they still might think it's too complex, even though we really tried to show how easy it is. But yeah, so I mean, sharing that free information, sharing these things for free is good, because then the people who really care, but don't have the time, maybe, will hire us or a young adult.
Yeah.
So yeah, but hopefully they do go and use it, because again, it's beyond easy, the things we showed, but a lot of them still had questions. So hopefully they can talk to them more.
And thank goodness that there are people that have money that they don't want to do it themselves, because then we can sell services and stuff that might be kind of obvious to you or me, because we've done it so many times, is anything but obvious to them. And that's why there's no risk, I believe, in giving out your secrets of how you do stuff.
I agree.
Because when we publish these things that are super in-depth, people realize, dang, these guys really know. Like, I had no idea that there's this level of complexity, and then they're even more likely to want to hire you, even if they're already doing a pretty good job. I find the people that will hire us for consulting actually are usually pretty far along, but they mainly want us to look over what they've done, to validate it, and maybe make just a couple suggestions. And those are the best kinds of clients. So when you get like an Adidas that comes in and says, we're launching a new shoe, can you help us with the analytics and social media, work with our agencies, see if you can make them better? Then you don't have to provide a ton of services. You basically just have to review the stuff that they're doing. And if your presentation is along the lines of a framework, which means here's a necessary set of inputs, here's a process that you follow, and here's the result, then everyone clearly understands the value that you provide, because you're demonstrating it in your life, you're demonstrating it when you're at the conference, and then it's very clear what's going to happen if they hire you for consulting. So there's other people in the audience here that we didn't know that they run some kind of SaaS application, or there was a guy from USA Volleyball. There was a guy who 431 Sports, they do the merchandise for a lot of these guys. And so I bet you these folks, even though they're not club directors, they're going to say, hey, can we hire you? Or they're going to say, can you come speak at our conference? So you know how this speaking came about. I spoke at the National Funeral Directors Association, a room full of 10,000 funeral directors.
Yeah.
And there was someone who was also part of the JVA who was running this conference, and she said, I saw what you did for the funeral directors. Can you teach AI to volleyball? Does that relate? And I said, it's the same thing, because we're telling stories, we're following the 4-stage content factory.
Exactly.
It's just different ingredients, but the same machine.
Yep.
And I said, with the funeral directors, we got a bunch of funeral directors to find their Dylan Haugans, and because funeral homes are usually multi-generational families where they're getting the younger adults to do the social media and eventually take over the funeral home, right? Well, the same thing applies for these volleyball clubs. And I think it applies for plumbers and landscapers and whatnot, where they can bring their kids into the business. And it's super awesome. I think that's the death of agencies, is the combination of AI in the hands of some smart young adults.
Yeah, one thing you pointed out yesterday is that the younger the person, the higher, they understand about technology, but also the less likely they are to follow through. So I do think, like, as those kids grow up and they actually, have real jobs and things, that'll definitely take over a lot of agencies, because they'll be able to do both.
Yeah.
Work.
And then you have folks like Dylan who, at 17, I'm sure everyone's thinking, like, how is a 17-year-old speaking at industry conferences and it's such a big deal? But because it's AI and social media and technology, being younger is an advantage, because they just assume people who are younger are better at tech.
Yeah.
So play that to your advantage if you're younger.
Definitely.
Other words of advice?
I mean, just kind of re-saying what I already said, but yeah, just know about what you're talking about. Don't try to make it too complex, because chances are you're going to be presenting to people who know less than you, and even, you just want them to understand what you're saying, and you want it to be valuable to them. So don't try to overdo it. Don't try to overplan. just go in, know what you want to get across, and yeah, engage with the audience as well. That's a big one.
Amen.
that.
And so when you engage with the audience and you level with them, you're empathetic with where they are, I think that sets the right vibe.
I agree.
And you could tell that people, it felt like we were sharing information with friends.
Totally, yeah. I agree.
Instead of like, we're in this cold room and like, who are these people? And you can tell like when there's the bad vibe or a good vibe, but this is a really great vibe.
I liked it.
Yeah. And it's neat because even though we've never met these people before, when you are featured as a speaker and they see your name and face in the communication that's being sent out to the conference, then they already know, like, and trust you. And that's the same thing with being on a podcast or having great reviews or client references or people giving recommendations on LinkedIn. These are all different ways of building trust. So we collected some video. I'm sure there's going to be some conference follow-up where the conference is going to say, hey, here's some summaries and thank you to Dylan and Dennis and whatnot. And those are all items that you want to collect.
Yeah.
A lot of speakers are so afraid. They're preparing just for that moment that, it's like, I just want to make sure the presentation goes well. And then once the presentation's done, it's like, I can relax now. But they forget you have to capture those moments.
Yep.
So thanks to John Haugen for collecting the videos, right? And I saw that there's a guy who is running the camera in the back, and they're going to do the replay on that and put it on their website. So
That'll be cool, yeah.
there's going to be a bunch of people that weren't in this room that get to watch this replay. And then they're going to reach out to you and me, and they're going to ask for help. And it might even be, 5 years down the road. I've had stuff where I spoke at a conference 10, 15 years ago, and people saw the thing on YouTube. And it's just so cool, right?
Yeah,
Like
everything lives on YouTube.
Yeah, yesterday, some guy said, oh, you probably don't remember me, because I spoke at this other conference yesterday. He said, like, yeah, I first saw you, I saw you speak 10 years ago at this other place. I'm like, I remember, yeah, it was 10 years ago. Like, I can't, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? And you build a reputation. So think about public speaking as your way of, if anyone comes across this, because people could be taking pictures, because people are taking selfies, or, they want to take pictures with us afterwards, which is a good sign. These are all great ways where you establish that you are an expert practitioner in a certain thing.
Definitely, yeah.
So think about that. That's more important than a business card or your LinkedIn or whatever, because people can see the real experience and they can see what all the other people have to say about you.
Yeah.
So, love to hear. What do you guys think? You're about to do your first public speech and you're nervous. How are these tips helping you? Or if you've already spoken before, what tips do you think that we should cover that we haven't talked about? Dylan, where can people find you?
Find me on my personal brand website, dylan-haugen.com. Dylan Haugen on most social media. Yeah, just my name.
And if he didn't have a knowledge panel, if he didn't have the social proof, if he hadn't been making videos since he was 11, then he wouldn't have been qualified to be able to speak at the conference. But anybody can Google him and see, like, yep, he's actually earned the right to speak at the conference on how to do all this stuff. And just like me, they can Google me, they can see, like, yep, this guy's definitely done AI, technical website sorts of things.
Exactly.
And think about that. If we Google your name, what shows up? You might say you're an expert in this one thing, but is there clear proof when I Google your name that it's there?
Mm-hmm.
So think about that, and love to hear what you guys think.